I'm so pleased now to be joined once again by Jason Sobel to discuss what we witnessed at the Masters. Hey, Jason, thanks for taking a couple minutes.
Hello, Carolyn. Thanks for having me, as always.
Hello. Of course, I don't even really know where to start because there were so many main storylines besides Jon Rahm and the sort of celestial quality, all of the funny coincidences, and him certainly continuing the longstanding tradition of these incredible Spaniards who have won the Masters in these major tournaments. But then you had all this side drama with Liv and Phil Mickelson, Tiger Woods being hobbled, Sam Bennett. You know, when you think about the week that was, and I know you were at Augusta, what storyline sort of resonates most deeply with you first?
So I have always maintained, I mean, this goes back to Phil Mickelson blowing things at Wingfoot, that we always need to pay particular attention to the winner. This is a guy that shot the lowest score out of 72 holes, and they deserve to be story 1A, no matter what else Tiger Woods does or what else a rival league's players do or anything like that. So I do think we have to start with Jon Rahm and the fact that the underlying theme for me was his perseverance. He started with a 4-putt double bogey on the first hole. A few years ago, Jon Rahm, who's been known to have a temper, be a little bit of a fiery player, may have just packed it in, broken a putter over his knee, and never gotten things going. On Thursday, he birdied the next 2 holes, shot 65 that day, tied for the first round lead, and went on from there. He got stuck in the wrong side of the draw, as we saw. While Brooks Koepka was sipping cocoa while sitting in his rental house on Saturday morning, Jon Rahm was out there playing in the worst conditions. Again, might have set him off a few years ago. And then he goes into Sunday trailing Brooks Koepka by a few shots, but plays patiently, does what he needs to do, and comes back for the win. So I do think that's story 1A, but there's a whole lot of stories 1B, 1C, 1D, and on.
It was such a grind to watch him start that day 4 shots back of Brooks Koepka, and then he had it in hand, I think, around hole 14 or something, but you just got the sense that it was such a slog for everybody out there. And I loved what he said after that 4-putt double bogey to start it. You know, he's like, if you're going to do that, you might as well do it right out of the gate. And it was funny because when he did that, I thought, this guy's probably going to come back and win, because that's how wild the Masters is. It's just like anything can happen, especially on that back nine. The final round is always so wild, but just how difficult was it? I mean, you saw guys grimacing, freezing. The weather obviously was very uncooperative. The whole week and into the weekend just seemed like one of those ones that you really had to earn.
So I don't know, maybe someone in Augusta National has a direct line to Mother Nature. I certainly don't, and I don't know how they can dial these things up, but I felt like it was almost like a video game. We saw this at the Players' Championship last year where we had a few different seasons, a few different types of conditions within a 4-day span. And for me, as a fan, as someone who's covering the game, I feel like those are the best weeks for a major championship because it tests every single player's game in different elements. So it's not just 72 and sunny and no wind for 4 days. It's not 50 with wind blowing for 4 straight days. It's not raining for 4 straight days, but we had different kinds of weather. It felt like summer to start. Then it felt like a November Saturday, as if, you know, we were ready for a late fall football game in the 3rd round and on. And so I thought it was very interesting. And like I said, I think it tests the mettle of these players even more so when they have different conditions to go through. What I thought Rahm did the best was, like I said, he stayed patient, and Augusta National will essentially give you signals. They'll give players signals. Hey, you've got a green light here. You can be aggressive. You can go for this pin. Well, now you've got a yellow light. You can go for it a little bit, but don't get too aggressive. Now it's a red light. Don't go anywhere near this pin. Be cautious. Get away from here with a par. And so I thought Jon Rahm did the best out of anybody in the field of sort of following those red, yellow, and green lights throughout the 4 days, and especially on Sunday.
I love that he's a student of the game, that he studies the history of the game and has an intimate knowledge of the Spaniards who have influenced the game, like so many other golfers who care so deeply about the sport. But to have it happen on Seve Ballesteros' birthday and to listen to him sort of detail and have the information, just instant recall about what this ultimately means for his country, what it means for him personally, I thought was really just so special. And to regain the world #1 ranking now for him moving forward, because, you know, we watched his story unfold this weekend, and I'll try to hit a couple of golfers and sort of project into the future about what this tournament actually means moving forward. But for Jon Rahm, you know, to finally have this green jacket and to be playing the level of golf that he's playing at, you know, what does the future for him for the rest of this season look like?
The sky's the limit. And whether we're talking short term or long term, whether it's the rest of this season, Carolyn, or moving forward for the next 10 years, Jon Rahm may very well be the guy that sort of takes the mantle from whoever had it before. And I'm not sure where it went from Tiger to Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa. We can throw in a bunch of other names. And Scotty Scheffler's certainly in that conversation. I don't think Jon Rahm's going to be dominant, but in my mind, even coming into this past week, even though Scotty Scheffler had won 2 events since Jon Rahm had won his 3 at the beginning of the year, even though Rory McIlroy somehow had shorter odds than Jon Rahm going into the Masters last week, for my money, Jon Rahm is the best player in the game right now. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. He's got 4 wins already just early into the 4th month of the year. Again, like I said, the sky's the limit. I don't know. At least I didn't think we would see anyone winning 8, 9, 10 times on the PGA Tour anytime soon because there is so much parity amongst the superstars at the top, but he may very well be the one to do it. And he has a penchant for stepping on the gas pedal. And that's exactly what you need to do when you're a superstar in this game because he loves winning. He loves stepping on the throats of the other players. He loves going out there and competing. And so I know those all sound like cliches, but more good things are coming for Jon Rahm very soon.
And those golfers in the upper echelon of the game seem to share those qualities and traits, even though sometimes I look at Scotty Scheffler and I wonder if he's got a pulse because he looks so relaxed out there. I should have bet Jon Rahm because I put money on Dustin Johnson for some inexplicable reason, thinking that he might show up from Live Golf and be able to do it. But I had a feeling that Jon Rahm might make something happen only because I thought, man, it's going to be really hard for Scotty Scheffler. There's a ton of pressure on him. And also Rory McIlroy, it just seems like he's gripping the wheel so hard because he wants this win so badly, and also had the added pressure of this Masters civil war, the Live Golf guys, the PGA Tour guys, even though that might be overblown because so many of them live in South Florida. But I thought, I don't know if Rory can get it done. I mean, were you surprised by the way in which he sort of fell apart? What did you expect from McIlroy going into the tournament, and what does this performance do moving forward for him?
I'll be frank, Rory's performance was appalling this past week, especially on Friday. He shot 72 in the first round, okay, still kind of in it, 77 in the second round. He tied Jose Maria Olazabal, who doesn't even play on the senior tour anymore. He looked like he was almost relieved after making some of those bogeys, walking off greens with a little wry smile on his face as if, hey, I haven't figured it out and I'm never going to figure it out and I'm never going to win a green jacket. He wound up withdrawing from the RBC Heritage this week, which is very telling for a few different reasons. I am not sure where Rory's mind is right now, but Carolyn, for the first time, because for the last 10 or 12 years, we kept assuming it's inevitable. Rory's going to win a green jacket at some point. He's too good for it not to happen. I start looking at it. He turns 34 in a couple of weeks. He hasn't won a major by the time he gets back to Augusta next year in a full decade. You're starting to look at the window closing a little bit. You can absolutely see whether it's a Scotty Scheffler, a Jon Rahm, or a few younger new players winning over the next 3 or 4 years. Next thing you know, Rory McIlroy's in his late 30s, hasn't won a green jacket, and all of a sudden, poof, his chances just kind of disappear. And so very much like Greg Norman, ironically, before him, very much like Ernie Els before him as well, we all thought Rory would win a green jacket. We thought it was predestined, and I'm not so sure anymore. And the way the body language, the way you could read his face on Friday, it looks like he's not so sure anymore either.
It's presumptuous to think that anybody can just show up and win it at Augusta because of how difficult and unforgiving it is. Do you think it is a mental collapse in terms of wanting the career Grand Slam so bad, having the expectations and the weight of the world on his shoulders at Augusta? It's almost like cringeworthy to think that he would go into that place with expectations so high and have a full-on meltdown.
Yes, all of those things. I mean, look, at some point it is physical, it is technical, but yeah, there's a whole lot of mental scar tissue there right now. And Rory's tried everything. He's tried to make the Masters mean everything to him. Well, that didn't quite work. He's tried to trick himself into thinking it means nothing. That didn't work. He's tried to play there very little before the tournament starts. He's tried to play there a lot. He played 81 holes in practice in the week leading up to the tournament rounds. That obviously didn't work this week. I feel like Rory's thinking himself, what else can I do? I've sort of run out of ideas. I've run out of tricks. I've run out of strategies to go out and win this thing. It's absolutely mental. I think, unlike we'll see Jordan Spieth a month from now try to claim the last leg of the career slam at the PGA Championship, it's a whole lot easier if you only need the Wanamaker trophy as opposed to the green jacket. And I do think this is weighing on Rory, and it's going to weigh on him for the next 51 weeks because he's not playing this week, like I said, but the next time he does play, guys like me are going to sit in a press conference and say, Rory, how come you can't win the Masters? Rory, what's wrong with you when you go to Augusta National? Rory, do you think that window is closing? Do you think you'll ever get it? And he's got to answer those questions over and over and over. And for one of the most honest players in golf, one of the most honest athletes we have in sports today, he's got to be open. He's got to show us sort of what he's feeling right now. And I know he really doesn't want to do that, but that's just sort of part of the business.
Yeah, who can blame him, right, for having to answer why he can't do the thing he wants to do the most. Phil Mickelson, fascinating. This guy shows up on 1,000 cups of black coffee and somehow manages to put together a performance that nobody really expected coming in. What were your impressions of what he was able to do, and why do you think he was able to play so well?
I have absolutely no explanation for Phil Mickelson right now. I really don't, Carolyn. I wish I did. I wish I could sit here and tell you, oh, yeah, we all saw this coming. He'd been playing so well. He played 3 live events. They only have 48 players in the live fields. He played 3 of them this year. He hadn't finished better than 27th place. He hadn't finished in the top half of a single field yet. It reminds me of Kiowa 2 years ago when, of course, he won the PGA Championship at the age of 50, where going into Kiowa, he kept saying, I'm feeling good. I think good things are coming. And you look at his results, and you're like, no, they're not coming. Phil, we can see things. We see the stats. We see the numbers. We see the results. It doesn't look like good things are coming. And Phil proved himself right then. He was saying the very same things this past week at Augusta National. And same thing. We're looking at it going, Phil, no, like you're not going to play well. Stop trying to tell us you're close. You're close. You're close. And apparently he was really close, and he knows himself better than we do, I guess. But as far as everything else around Phil Mickelson, I mean, we've got to remember the timeline on this is very, very strange, very awkward. A year ago, Phil didn't play in his favorite golf tournament of the year, essentially because he wasn't injured. He was, I don't know, staging a coup for the world's best players to go to a rival league for the cause of disruption in the game of professional golf. It's a very long-winded explanation for a WD, but that's essentially why he didn't play last year. And to go from that to finishing in a share of runner-up honors a year later, I throw my hands up. I mean, there used to be a campaign slogan for a company that said, "What will Phil do next?" They almost need to bring it back. I know no one wants to sponsor Phil anymore, but "What will Phil do next?" is ringing truer now than it ever has before.
How much of it do you think is him relishing an opportunity to be back on the national stage? He's been making headlines for all the wrong reasons at LIV, having to answer very difficult questions. And, you know, I wonder, you followed him much more closely for much longer than I have, if he is a gamer and if some of those guys who are over at LIV, even though they're all smiles, they're making a ton of money, the schedule is lighter, easier on the body, if there isn't a part of them that also felt motivated to be back in front of everybody and feel what it feels like to be taken seriously again.
Carolyn, it's a great point. I don't doubt that was part of it, but this wasn't the same brash Phil that we had seen in previous years. This wasn't as if he went out there saying, I'm going to show you guys, watch this, watch what I can do. All reports are that he was very quiet at the Champions Dinner, which usually is a place where I've written stories in the past. Phil likes to hold court that night and tell everybody how smart he is. But it also wasn't a Phil who was, giving thumbs up to the crowd everywhere and smiling. He almost seemed bashful inside the ropes, very grateful outside the ropes. When he spoke to the media, he spoke about how much the tournament means to him, how thankful he was to be able to come back and compete. So, yeah, there's part of that motivation for him playing in front of a big crowd again, but it wasn't as if this was hey, I got a chip on my shoulder. I'm going to show you guys that I can still do this thing. It was more of hey, I'm really, really enjoying myself here. I'm really thankful I can come back. And I'd really like to play well for all the people who came out to watch me.
It's fascinating insight, and it seems spot on. And in theory, I guess for, people like you and I that go out and hack up a golf course, you do play better when you're a little bit more relaxed. I mean, maybe he found some kind of zen. I wonder if that's more applicable to Brooks Koepka, who, watching Full Swing, I was introduced to a different side of him that I didn't know before about everything that he's been through, his struggle with his self-confidence. And he strikes me as a guy that might really miss the big stage and is looking for some kind of vindication. What do you think happened to him over the course of those final rounds? And why was he ultimately, coming up short at the end, in your opinion?
Yeah, so Carolyn, let's go back a little. We have to go back a couple of years to Brooks Koepka injuring his right knee, tried to play through it. That didn't quite work, had surgery, and even before the surgery and certainly afterwards, had to change his swing. New swing led to different results. Different results led to a loss in confidence. A loss in confidence, quite honestly, and he sort of admitted it, led to him joining Live Golf and leaving the PGA Tour because he thought the future was in doubt. As you alluded to there in the Full Swing documentary, he was very unsure of what the future could hold and whether he could stand up to the game's best players on the PGA Tour. And so he left for Live, got a whole lot of money, got paid, got a spot for his brother out there. And so he said he's happy out there and things are working out for him. But this is the competition that Brooks Koepka loves, being in the heat of the battle. I do think that there are probably some more positives he can take from this than negatives. I know that the general public always sees a player who's close to the lead or in the lead going into the final round who doesn't get it done as a major negative, as if they couldn't handle the pressure, they couldn't win when it mattered most. I will tell you, though, from speaking with players for years and years, that the players largely look at these experiences as positives. And even someone who's won 4 major championships in the past, like Brooks Koepka, there was still that doubt. There was still that little self-doubt. Now I think he goes into the next major championship knowing that he can stand toe-to-toe with a guy like Jon Rahm, even if he didn't win, knowing that he can compete with the world's best. And I think that confidence will lead him to maybe some more major championships at some point in the future. But it was good to see him. Look, take all the Live stuff out of the equation, whether you love the PGA Tour and hate the guys who left for Live. Maybe you like Live. I've told people, hey, if Live is more your cup of tea and you like the entertainment aspect of things as opposed to the competitive aspect of the PGA Tour, that's okay. You're allowed to. That's fine. But I don't think that anyone can argue the point that it's really good to see all the world's best players competing on one stage at least 4 times a year against each other.
Well, I think, and eventually what we're seeing now is those percentages revealing themselves to be more in favor of people who want to see guys go toe to toe than who want the overall experience. The huge headline coming into this thing was Live versus the PGA Tour. And then you had these articles and stories being written leading into the Masters about how that might be a little bit overblown. Some of these guys never got along to begin with. Some of these guys get along more than you think. Where do you think we are now that the Masters, this illustrious major, is kind of behind us, and we have seen everybody get into the sandbox for the most part and play pretty well together?
I still think, and to use an old Tiger quote, it is what it is, because quite frankly, the PGA Tour players are where they are right now. Most of them, if not all of them, are sticking with it, and they're going to keep playing the PGA Tour. The Live players, they all have contracts. And PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan has pointed this out. I know a lot of the public, and certainly I hear this on social media all the time, why can't they just get together and form an alliance and everyone get along and play nice? There's not really that option. I mean, there's still pending litigation from Live towards the PGA Tour, so it's really hard to play nice with someone who's trying to sue you. And then there's the part that, there's a contractual obligation for the Live players to continue playing Live. It's not as if Brooks Koepka tomorrow can say, you know what, I'm going to stop playing Live. I'm going to go play the PGA Tour. That would be litigation in itself. And so there's not really an agreement to be had. So like I said, I see the PGA Tour more as a competition. I see Live more as entertainment. If you like one more than the other, that's okay. Look, now we have options in the professional game. I don't know that it's the best thing for the fans. I know certainly plenty of fans. I was just speaking with a friend of mine the other day who said, you know what, I'm kind of turned off by the whole thing. I'm not watching the PGA Tour now, and I'm not watching Live either. I've just kind of given it up. I think that's the huge negative for the game right now. The Live and Greg Norman wanted to disrupt the PGA Tour. What they've done really is disrupted professional golf the way it was, and they're losing fans, but it's still a sport that's thriving right now. Anyone who watched the Masters saw how much it's thriving at the top.
Yeah, interesting. And then just quickly, what's the average duration of the majority of those live contracts? I mean, are you talking about like 2 or 3 years before Koepka could make a decision to come back over if he wanted to?
Yeah, I believe they are mostly 3-year deals. I think there are some lesser deals that are only 2-year deals, which would largely be up at the end of this season. But again, then we get into the question as to whether the PGA Tour, Jay Monahan, the policy board, would have a penalization period for those players having to come back. Let's say it's a Harold Varner III, a Taylor Gooch. If they wanted to come back, do they have to pay a fine? Do they sit out for 6 months to a year? Do they have to requalify through Q School? All of these questions are still unanswered. I think that the executives in Ponte Vedra Beach have probably gone to a whiteboard and written down all the possibilities at some point and still haven't circled the right answer for them. But at some point, they're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, maybe with time, cooler heads would prevail in terms of penalty period, because I would guess, and this is just me, pure speculation, that it would be a rough ride to get back in once you made such a declarative statement that you wanted out. I mean, that really was a tough pill for those guys to swallow. So it could be a good couple of years. It's a great point that you bring up. I won't keep you for too long. I always keep you way over the time that I reserve for the two of us. But
Great.
Tiger Woods, it was tough to see him struggle and be physically hobbled down the stretch. I've listened to everybody coming into the Masters try to identify his internal struggle, where he's at mentally. Does he love the game? Does he not love the game? I was on a flight from somewhere going to somewhere before the Masters, and I watched that show that he did before he got into the car accident in 2021. He was on the course with Dwayne Wade, and Dwayne said to him, what's it like to be the GOAT? What's it like to be the greatest? And I was so shocked when he said, I'm not the greatest. I'm not done yet. I'm not done. I can't fully, basically me paraphrasing, he can't really fully admit the full breadth of his career when he feels like there are chapters still to be written. And that wasn't that long ago. I mean, that was before he almost lost his leg, but it gives you a small glimpse into his competitiveness and his feeling that he has so much more to give. Clearly on a course like that, it's not going to be possible right now with where he is physically. What was running through your mind when you saw him out there, you saw him make the cut, which was incredible, and then ultimately when you started to sense that he was going to have to withdraw?
So I think the narrative has changed since those videos, and that was shot literally, I think, the day or two before that car accident in Los Angeles 2 years ago. By the way, I spent time with Dwayne Wade in Augusta last week. What an absolute great guy.
Wonderful guy.
Inside there. But as far as Tiger this past week, it looked like he could barely walk at the end of Saturday's play. They were suspended mid-afternoon on Saturday, and he was just shuffling his way around the golf course. It's sad to see. I will point out, though, that the fact that he made the cut, especially when his buddies Rory McIlroy and Justin Thomas did not make the cut, and Tiger, who's shuffling around out there, did, I don't think we should overlook just how big of an achievement that is for him. No, he wasn't able to play on Sunday. All reports are that he tried to. He woke up early, went through his entire routine, and just said, I can't do it. I can't go out there and walk. He would have had to play, I think, 28 holes, and he just couldn't go out there and muster it. That said, for the first time, at least for me, I have learned, Carolyn, to never write off Tiger Woods. I don't care if he's 75 years old and shows up to the first tee at Augusta National as a ceremonial first starter and has a walker. I still think he has a chance of winning a green jacket. That said, for the first time for me, I think that he is closer to hanging it up for good and not playing than he is to winning another major championship. That doesn't mean he's going to retire and never play again. It doesn't mean he can't win again. I just think the probability of him not playing is probably greater than the probability of him winning one again in the future. And so it's just slowly, gradually shifting that way. And I will say that if you really want to know where Tiger is right now, if you really want to know what the future holds for Tiger, listen to Tiger, because he's been telling us for the last couple of years, to anyone who wants to listen, hey, this isn't going to last forever. This is going to last a little while. I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to see what I can do, but I'm not going to be out here forever. And I think that people are still, because he's had so many comebacks over the years, people are still looking at him like, yeah, okay, whatever, man. You'll be better next year and you'll come out and win this thing. And yeah, he may try to, and I love it. I'd love to see him go out there and continue trying for as long as he'd like to. And hopefully he can become healthier, and hopefully the swing looked pretty good. Hopefully the swing continues to improve, and hopefully he can get better results. But I don't think we should be surprised if we don't see Tiger for a while moving forward. It would surprise me. Again, talking about those probabilities, I would say there's a greater probability we don't see him at a chilly Rochester Oak Hill Country Club for the PGA Championship next month. Be more of a surprise if he's not there, if he is there, than if he's not. I don't know that we'll see him at the U.S. Open in Los Angeles come June, and maybe the Open Championship could be the next time we see him. Again, those are all just guesses, and I think everything for Tiger right now is a guess. But if you really want to know what's happening with Tiger, listen to Tiger.
Well, it's fodder for our delusion when he goes out and makes the cut at the Masters and you see Rory McIlroy packing it up early because you're like, man, he can do it. And then you see the schedule and the weather and you think, can he get a little bit of rest? Can he, we don't want to believe it, to your point. I mean, nobody wants to believe that he's human because he's proven invincible time and time and time again. But you're right. I mean, none of us have our ears open, and we should just be listening to the fact that eventually Father Time always wins and his body will eventually break down. I mean, what a tournament. What a tournament for a tour that has been in chaos, to have everybody come back together and to leave with just a plethora of storylines. It was so fun to watch. Jason, I will let you go. Thank you so much for the time. Unless we missed anything, unless you have any takeaways from the Masters that you think we didn't touch on moving forward for golf fans.
Oh my God, how much more time do we have? We can get into Fred Couples making the cut at 63, the oldest man. Sam Bennett, the amateur, was awesome.
I got my with Sam Bennett. I can't.
You had the full Jordan experience. I don't know. What do we have, another hour?
I know. I can't let you go. I got to ask you about Sam Bennett. I mean, what a kid. What a story. I just, that's so feel good to have him be in Butler Cabin with Jim Nantz at the end of it all, with everything that he's been through. That was phenomenal. Do you think he's got a ton of new fans that he didn't have already after this last weekend?
Absolutely has a ton of new fans. Great story. Couldn't agree more. I do think that Sam Bennett, the reputation is probably a little bit higher than the potential right now, just because everyone saw him this past week. Everyone thinks he's going to be the next big star. There are probably other players in college right now who have more potential than he does, but this is going to be very good for him in the short term, because I assume he's a fifth-year senior at Texas A&M. I'm going to assume that he's going to turn pro within the next month or two, maybe 3 months. But at some point, he turns pro, and every single PGA Tour event will be offering him a sponsor exemption because he did appeal to the fans. They're going to have him play. And so he's essentially going to start his professional career on second base. And that's a good thing because a lot of guys don't have that advantage. Yeah, it really is. That was a great story. All right, Jason, thanks so much for the time. Remind everybody where they can find you. All of my written work and video work's on actionnetwork.com, the Action app, which is great for all sports. Then I host Hitting the Green on SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio, 2 to 4 Eastern time every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We'll be there. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Thanks, Carolyn.